And we are live.
We are live. We're live, and we've got audio this week.
That's it,
We've
man.
got audio straight off the bat this week as
Straight
well.
off the
Nice
bat.
one.
No muting going on.
Nice one. Okay, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching it back. Welcome back. We've got week 2 of our course that started last week, where we're just going to be looking at, today we're looking at the heart and how the heart works. And obviously does what it needs to do, getting the oxygen around your body to the muscles that need it. The course on a whole, obviously, if there's anything that you're not sure about what's coming up, we did like a little bit of like just sort of a summary at the start of last session, just where we looked at sort of everything that is sort of on the horizon and upcoming. So, you know, if you do hit a topic that you feel kind of in the know about or pretty confident about, and you're like, oh, you know what I mean? I could do with like, I want to read a little bit further ahead. Maybe you see where we're going to be next week's session. And of course, when we get to the end, I'll give you an idea where we're looking next week. But yeah, if there's anything you do want to go back from last week's video and just familiarize yourself with that, like I say, by all means do. We've got a little bit of arts and crafts this morning, actually. We've got a nice easy one that he's saying anyway. So yeah, guys, if you can grab yourselves a pen and a piece of paper. Ideally 2 pens if you've got them of different colours, and it'll just make what we're going to do a little bit more easy to understand when you're reading it back as well, as much as anything. So yeah, we're going to be looking at the heart. It's obviously one of the most important organs that we've got, playing a really vital role in keeping us alive. And I think we all sort of understand how important the heart is, but not necessarily why.
Yeah.
Or definitely how it works, how it does. You know, if you were to go to a GP or something and they told you, okay, you're at risk of certain valves getting blocked through diet and stuff like that, we need to make a change. You know, it'd be nice to be able to sort of picture what that actually means. Do you know what I mean? When it comes to your own health, because I think, like we sort of said when we looked at the skeleton last week, I think a lot of the time when we see things, we just see them on a diagram as they're drawn perfectly. And it's easy to not really factor in our lifestyle choices and the effects that they can have on these sort of body parts. The skeleton's one of them. Again, we talked about sort of bone density and making sure that we're getting enough nutrients in our diet to keep our bones strong. And our heart's exactly the same. It needs looking after through our diet. It's not just there to do a job. It pumps. Yeah. We do whatever we've got to do. You know, it goes both ways. It looks after you, and you've got to look after it eventually. You know. It sort of realising how important it is to sort of picture what's going on within your own body and within your own chest. Was when my granddad actually had a heart attack. He survived a heart attack, and he'd been smoking for like 50, 60 years. And the X-ray or the scan or whatever it was that they showed him of his heart, he said, I can't believe that that's the only thing keeping me alive and I've neglected it 50, 60 years. You know, just seeing it in front of him as this is yours. It's not one in a textbook. You know, it's not one in a textbook that belongs to somebody else and it's for somebody else to look after. This one's yours, you know, unless you're really lucky, it's going to be the only one that you're going to get. Take care of it, you know. And it was just sort of really, and he's never touched a cigarette since, you know, just being able to see the damage that he'd done to his own sort of heart and obviously living through the consequences of those lifestyle choices. Like I say, that's got to be 15 years ago, and he's never touched a cigarette since, you know. And of course, smoking's not the only thing that can affect our heart, you know. Like we say, we've got fatty diet, trans fats in all of our foods, you know, salt even, you know, because salt's creeping its way into our food a lot more these days, as even just as a preservative, gives stuff longer shelf life, you know. We don't know what effects the likes of Brexit's going to have on obviously import and how long we need to store stuff this side, how long stuff needs to last before it goes off. And of course, being able to analyse how much salt and identify how much salt is in our food is going to be really important in years to come as well, which is why we're going to spend a week next week looking a little bit of sort of healthy eating and how to break down those food labels as well. Yeah, but that's exactly it. But, you know, it's always sort of subject to change, especially when it comes to food, when it comes to regulations and stuff like that. And yeah, it's also interlinked. You know, what you're eating is affecting pretty much. I know we've mentioned it before. If your body's replacing its cells, sort of like permanently repairing its cells and regenerating, then you literally are what you eat, because it can only repair those cells with what's going in. It's either going to be good quality food, and you'll have good muscle tissue, good sort of cartilage and joints and stuff like that as well. And I think if you're eating a load of junk, it not only shows sort of like in your skin and stuff like that, but all over.
Oh, for sure, man. It's yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, like weight gain even, or significant weight loss, that's like, so it shows in a number of ways. But it's also like, not only like, as you're saying, it shows on the outside, shows on the inside. You're gonna feel more lethargic. You're gonna just, your general kind of sense of well-being is gonna be massively diminished.
Yeah, and you think about it, when your heart is beating, all it is doing is contracting to squeeze blood and oxygen around your body. Now, if you've got a load of sort of fatty mass, or any kind of fat in them valves, in your arteries, in your veins, stuff like that, then the heart could potentially go from trying to squeeze through a vein that's that wide to maybe that big, which is going to increase the pressure that's in there, which is where our high blood pressure can come from as well.
Yeah.
And it obviously increasing the risk of heart attacks and stuff like that, because your heart has maybe got to beat twice as hard just to force the blood and the oxygen through the sort of the veins and the arteries that it's trying to, which is why obviously we get that lot of strain on the heart, with sort of bad diet, and over the years as well. You don't necessarily have to be doing anything too strenuous to trigger a heart attack. It could just be a case of your heart has worked that hard for so long, and it's something's got to give eventually. Which is again, it sort of comes into our day-to-day life. Going up the stairs, are you out of breath? Is that your body struggling to get the oxygen round to where it needs to be, to the muscles that are getting you up the stairs? And of course, we can feel it in fitness as well. I mean, I think we're all going to have a little bit to look forward to coming out of lockdown, when we go back to that first proper workout, or that first, that first sports game that we go and do, where we can go back and do 5-a-side or something, just because we haven't been able to do it for so long.
True.
It's going to be a shock to the body, and it's going to be a shock to the heart, and that's why we're saying that now's as good a time as any to be trying to be active, because, we've still got access to all the same foods, but we don't have access to all the same ways to exercise and burn them calories off and stay fit as we did, so yeah, saying that obviously getting out for walks and stuff like that, doing a little bit of stuff in the house if you can, maybe find somewhere where you can go and do your hobby where you feel safe doing it.
Yeah.
I know we've got some loose kind of guidelines and dates for things opening up again, something that we can maybe keep our eyes out for and keep our ear to the ground for.
Definitely.
And just think about what we're going to do going forwards. But of course, the best way to think about how we're going to take care of our heart and our bodies is to understand how they work, which is why we're going to do what we're going to do. We're just going to do a little diagram, just nice and simple, because it tends to be quite black or white with the heart. You'll either see like a diagram that's a really crudely drawn like Valentine's Day heart, or you'll see like a really overcomplicated, like really scientific sort of image in like a textbook or something like that. So yeah, just try to simplify things a little bit. And the two colors that you've picked out for yourself, even if it's a pen and a pencil, that is just going to indicate the difference between oxygenated blood, so blood that's carrying oxygen to muscles to deliver that to where it needs to be, and deoxygenated blood, which is blood that has delivered its oxygen and it's working its way back round to the lungs to pick up more oxygen, and then back to the heart to just repeat the cycle again. So yeah, just cool. Trying to break it down a little bit and make it a little bit more straightforward and easy to follow. So if we can just go to the first slide, buddy. Oh, you've already beat us to it. I just checked the chat. He's way ahead of us this morning, man. He's dusting the cobwebs off us, right? So what we're gonna do, first thing first. Here's one I've prepared earlier. We've got 4 boxes, or we've got one big box divided into 4. And we've got that one thicker wall, or that one thicker line down the middle. So what we've got there, we've got our 4 chambers of the heart, because that's how it's divided, give or take. It's our 4 main chambers. So we've got 2 on the left, 2 on the right, and we've actually got a thick wall down the middle that we call the septum.
Yeah.
So if you ever heard of like a septum piercing in the nose or something like that, because that's exactly the same thing. It's just a thick sort of wall that separates one side of your nose from the other. And this wall in the heart, this septum in the heart, is doing exactly the same thing, because as we're going to see as we sort of develop our diagram that little bit more, we're going to see that we don't want anything from the left hand side to get over into the right hand side when it comes down to blood flow and vice versa. So if at any point this morning we're moving through the slides a little bit quick and you're a little bit more of an artist than I am and you want to spend a little bit more time on it, then by all means just hit pause and spend as much time as you want, and then you can catch up, or maybe get the basics down, and then later on when we're done, when you're going back over it, just fill things in a little bit more. It's entirely up to you, whatever works best for yourself. So yeah, that first step, we've just got our 4 boxes with that thick sort of septum wall down the middle. Okay, so far so good. So we'll go next slide, please, do.
Yeah, no worries, mate.
Nice one, cool. So from there, we're dividing things into left and right. Now, on the diagram, you're going to see that we've kind of got them the wrong way around. So the way to sort of picture it is that you're looking at somebody else.
Yeah.
So they're facing you and you're looking at their heart, yeah? So if you're thinking of it as your heart, spin side on, left-hand side lines up with the left, right-hand side lines up with the right. Yeah, or if you've got it on a piece of paper, bring it to your chest, spin it round, and it'll be left and right, facing the right way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we've got there, like I say, we've got the left-hand side and the right-hand side, and we can see that they're very sort of almost deliberately, and again we're going to understand why they're deliberately separated by that septum wall down the middle. So all we've got to do for this second step is just put left and right on the right sides, and then we can actually start labeling them in a little bit more detail on that next slide. So if we can spin on, please, buddy.
Can do, mate.
So what we've got next, so we're not only sort of split into left and right, but we're split into top and bottom as well, but we don't have the septum dividing this top and bottom. Yeah, so each side has got a top and a bottom, and they're still very separate thanks to that septum running down the middle. So what we've got at the top on either side is the left atrium and the right atrium. Yeah, and then at the bottom we've got the left and the right ventricles. Yes, so we're going to see in a second how the blood enters the left atrium and exits the left ventricle and sort of disperses out to the body. So sort of first touching with the heart, first run through with the heart, nothing on the right hand side at all yet. Yeah, so again, we're going to see why it's so important that they are separated. So yeah, for now we've got our 4 boxes just indicating our 4 different chambers of the heart, and we've got left and right atrium and ventricle as well. Cool. Right. So on this next slide, we can obviously we know that the lungs and the heart are sort of within the body. As well. I mean, if you're in good health, they should be anyway. They should be in the body. Yeah, if not, there's something wrong.
You're like an alien or something.
I've got to say, yeah. There's something wrong if not. But what we're going to do, we're just going to pull like a box either side of our main square or our main cube, and we're going to label the one on the left hand side is going to be the body, and the one on the right hand side is going to be the lungs. And this is just showing where the blood is coming either from or to. Yeah, so again, of course, it's all sort of going on really, really sort of close in its own sort of closed circuit. But yeah, just to sort of make it a little bit easier to visualize how the blood flows through the body. Yeah, we've got one to the left-hand side body, and then we've got the lungs on the right-hand side as well. Cool. Right, so we're going to grab that first colored pen or whatever it is that you're going to use, and this is going to be our oxygenated blood. Yeah, so somewhere on your piece of paper, just do yourself a little key so you remember which is which. And as like you can see on the bottom left of that one there, on that next slide, we've got, like I say, just that little red indicator that the oxygenated blood is going to be marked by the red pen. Yeah, cool, right. Nice one. Cool, right. So from there, we can start to see how we're starting to fill things in a little bit. We've got that arrow coming from the lungs, because that's a good place to think about the whole cycle sort of starting. You know, that's the way I tend to think about it. You can go from the heart as well. But of course, the lungs are where the oxygen's coming in, and we're going to look at that as well and how that gets into the blood system, and into your bloodstream. But yeah, it's a good place to start. That's where blood ends up when it's dropped its oxygen off, and that's where it's going to start the process picking up new oxygen again. So if we, even just for now, while we're getting the grip with things, start from the lungs and work our way over to that left atrium. Yeah, so we can see that, like I say, it's the oxygenated blood, so the blood that's carrying oxygen is ready to be dispersed around your body. And of course, like I say, we all know that when the heart beats, that's what it's doing. It's just sending that blood out with the oxygen in. But it goes from the left atrium down into the left ventricle first,
Yeah.
and then out of a big sort of a big major artery at the bottom. Yeah, so we've got the left atrium where it comes into the heart, the left ventricle where it exits the heart, and then it's off round to the body. Yeah, so the oxygenated blood, blood carrying oxygen, doesn't pass through your right hand side at all, or the right hand side of your heart. So we've worked our way around to the body. So like I say, the blood is going to all those muscles, you know, your quads, your pecs, even your brain. It's getting around to all those organs that need it and just delivering oxygen where it needs to be. And of course, that's why your heart rate comes up during exercise, because the more you're doing, the more oxygen your body actually needs and is using. You know, it's going at a faster rate, and that's usually what your body's doing, is just to get that oxygen around your body faster. Which is where, like, a normal sort of resting heart rate might be 60 to 80 beats per minute. You know, whereas if you were exercising quite intensely, it might be up to 130, 140, 150 even, you know. So yeah, that's what your heart's doing. It's beating harder and beating faster just to get the oxygen to where it needs to be, because you're using it at a faster rate while you're exercising, moving, whatever it is that you're doing, you know. I'm sure we've all had them moments where we feel out of breath, not even exercising, you know. Like I say, it might be after a couple of flights of stairs,
dude,
you know.
That's always when I know that I'm like getting out of shape, is when like ever like I do something like very pedestrian and mundane, and then I'm like, ooh, that actually like took me out of breath a little bit, and I'm like, that's when I like, it's usually an indicator for me to get my butt into gear and start working out again. Because
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's not good. That I shouldn't be knackered off that. Like, so that's yeah, happened a handful of times, and every time it happens, I'm like, gotta sort that out. Like,
Yeah, it really can serve as like a little bit of a kick up the backside. Yeah, it really can. And then you've sort of got the other end of the scale as well, where some people just get so used to it, you know, that becomes just normal for them. So they don't necessarily think of it as unfit, because it's easier then to start maybe shying away from the stuff that does that to you, rather than sort of say, right, I'm going to get fitter and healthier so my heart can manage that.
yeah,
It's just a feeling of, okay, I don't feel comfortable doing that because I'm sweating, I'm out of breath. I'll just not do it no more. And that can be like a little bit of a slippery slope as well, you know. And at the end of the day, you know, I've said it to clients over the years, you've got to listen to your body when it's talking to you, whether it's stiff, whether it's pain, you know, whether it's something that you can address it, that is potentially coming through lifestyle. Like I say, our lifestyle at the minute is going to have such a big knock-on effect, because for so many of us, each day just kind of looks the same. You know, like say, it's hard to say like, oh, I'm gonna go and have a kickabout with the lads this weekend. Like, it's not possible. We just can't do it. You know.
Do that. Maybe if you could, you know, those Zorb things you get where it's like that, like thing that you go inside and you can play football. Maybe if you all have one of those, that's kind of like social distancing. So like,
yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that's a game changer. You want to get on at the Premier League. You want to get on at the Premier League. Stop them cancellations.
There you go.
Oh, class! There you go. There's the future of five-a-side for you right there. Them Zob balls. I've never had a go at one of them actually. It'd be quite interesting to when we're allowed again.
I've always wanted to, mate. I've seen like quite a few people do it for like birthdays and that, and I thought like it would be quite funny to do with your mates. Like if you got enough of your mates together, it looked like a good laugh, but it just never happened. And I'd feel like a bit of a tool if I was just doing it by my Todd. But if you're doing it with all, if you know what I mean, if you're doing it with all your mates, though, it's different.
Yeah, I like to think like if if you're sitting on the bench, do you have to have your Zor ball on? Like, do you have to just sit and wait with your ball on to be so big?
I know you'd be like, oh man. So
It's
yeah.
like, yeah, at least no one can see my face. Yeah. Hey, we'll have to try and get the staff one sorted this year.
Definitely, mate.
Definitely, but yeah, you know, we're living these restricted lifestyles in one way, shape, or form, um, and like I say, every day is very similar. It's kind of the same as eating the same diet every day. You know,
Hmm.
if you're eating the same diet every day, and those meals that you've picked are quite deficient in something, you know, be it zinc, magnesium, even just protein, just say protein, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Um, for one day or a couple of days, if you eat the same thing, it's not as big an issue. But obviously, the longer that diet is maintained, or that whatever it is or behavior is maintained, the more drastic and the more sort of prominent those deficiencies can be.
Hmm.
So you know, if you're eating not enough protein for a couple of days, it's not going to have as big an effect on your body as if you don't eat enough protein for 6 months. You know, you're going to be in a lot sort of a worse physical condition, um, even just from a nutritional point of view. You
Of
know,
course,
rather
mate.
than
Yeah.
just your actual sort of weight. And lifestyle is exactly the same. If your lifestyle is deficient in exercise for a couple of days, it's not the end of the world.
Hmm.
But if that becomes maintained for 6 months, like it's very easy to have done, you know, over the course of what, 3 lockdowns, a global pandemic, it's easy for sort of every day to kind of look very similar. So if you're not getting enough exercise, um, like I say, for a couple of days it's okay, but for a lot of people, it's just been so stretched out now, and it's just become the norm. There's a lot of stuff that we're maybe not getting enough of. Sunlight's probably one of them,
Yeah.
social interaction being another thing, but just day-to-day exercise as well. I mean, there's even so much housework you can do in one day.
True, dude.
You
True,
know,
mate.
I'm a huge advocate for, you know, especially during lockdown while we've got restrictions, can we be doing a little bit more around the house? You know, even if it's getting the Hoover out, getting the duster out.
Hmm.
It's all movement at the end of the day, because you know, we've maybe exhausted our online exercises that we're going to do, or our workouts that are familiar to us, or we're maybe tired of doing the same walks day after day and seeing the same thing and the same sort of sights. So in just to give yourself that little bit of variety, just trying to get like a little bit of movement in, like around the house, you know, moving furniture or whatever it is. I mean, not necessarily going out the way, and moving furniture around just for the sake of a little bit of exercise, but there's a lot of things we could be doing, you know, even
Yeah,
if it's
I
stood
agree,
doing the
man.
washing up, stood doing the ironing, stood cooking, you know. A lot of it's better than being sat down in front of the Netflix, you
Hmm.
know, which is again, it's an easy habit to fall into,
Absolutely.
certainly at the minute. But again, yeah, there's only so much housework we can and want to do in every day,
Yeah.
you know. It's sooner or later we'll have the ability to go back to exercise and forms of exercise that we maybe enjoy a little bit more, or
Hmm.
it's even just a bit of a change, you know. You might not even have been bothered about the gym before lockdown, but now you've done all the walking that you were doing, and you've exhausted that. Maybe it's something that you want to try, you know, sort of as you look for a little bit of variety in sort of like your exercise and in your diet as well, you know. But it is so important that we're getting a little bit of exercise in. And of course, we can see now, just on this, what we're on step 5, on that last slide, or just going on to step 6, we can see how important it is that the heart can do what it needs to do effectively.
Yeah.
You know, because even a healthy heart, you can put strain on it through stress.
Yeah.
You know, stress levels is probably elevated for a lot of people right now.
Hmm.
You know, be it sort of uncertainty, be it financial, stress levels can even be higher. So again, your resting heart rate might just be on default, just that little bit higher. You might be getting more spikes in your heart rate every day. And of course, a healthy heart's going to deal with that a lot better than an unhealthy heart.
Yeah.
And of course, hopefully, the more we sort of fill this diagram in and finish up our diagrams, that'll just become more and more clear as we go on.
They call
Um,
stress the silent killer, don't they? And it's like you know, it can, yeah, it can massively affect you, and like can put a lot of strain on your heart, you know, because um there's like a myriad of things that stress can kind of do to your body, you know what I mean, in terms of like what's it, you know, your cortisol response, so your stress hormone's going to be pumped up, you're going to have a higher heart rate probably, so there's like so much stuff that, you know, can
yeah, well,
actually.
that's stress hormone actually encourages your body to hold on to fat as well.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
So it can lead to weight gain. So we're already maybe he's a little bit more stressed. So therefore, maybe he's even susceptible to a little bit more weight gain or storing that little bit of weight just from a chemical point of view,
Mm-hmm.
not from a change in diet or anything like that. But that stress hormone is strongly linked to retaining calories and fat and weight gain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but that's a really good shout, buddy. You know, um, like you say, mate. But yeah, we've got a lot of like you say, there's a lot of factors to sort of play into stress and stuff like that as well. And it's kind of because it's that natural flight or fight response, isn't it? You know, it's on a biological level, we're programmed when we've issued or faced with something that we see as a threat or threatening to us, to either fight it and deal with it, you know, or to run away. And to do either of those, your body gives you a big burst of adrenaline and spikes your heart rate up. Now, if from that survival point of view, when those traits have developed and sort of become ingrained in us as humans, those threats might have been saber-toothed tigers, do you know what I mean? Or like wildfires, stuff like that. Like you really don't know. Which again, you either fight it and you deal with it, or you run away from it.
True.
Which was always the plan. And the thing is, it's designed to be temporary.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling and that elevated sort of level, and that heightened state is meant to be temporary. And unfortunately, when you are stressed for prolonged amounts of time, it doesn't drop.
No.
It doesn't have a chance to drop. So, you know, normally you might have that fear of, oh, I've got to run away from this predator, and within half an hour, you know, you're like, okay, that's done. I think I've lost him, you know. But you know, you might get nowadays it might be you're getting bills through or like final notices on bills and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unfortunately, that isn't something we can really kind of fight or run away from. So we've got a lot of stresses in our life that stress us to that fight or flight response, but then it's maintained for so long that it just wears your body down.
Yeah.
It wears your body down because it's in that sort of fighting mode, isn't it? You know, and again, that can only be maintained for so long.
It's yeah, and it's like it's a snowball effect as well. So it's like you know, so say if it's like a social anxiety thing. So say you're because that's, you know, kind of similar. So say at first you don't want to go to like a party or something. Obviously we're not going to be doing that in COVID. And then so then you won't go to that because it makes you feel stressed. And then the next thing, like, you know, you don't want to go to a certain gathering with your friends or something, which is smaller than a party. Then the next thing, all of a sudden, you know, you don't want to get the bus because the bus makes you feel stressed. And then it's just like you're just kind of putting more and more barriers up. And it's easily done because you get that feeling or anxiety or fight or flight response, and then you can kind of easily just fall into comfort, right, and just decide, well, I'm not going to do anything because like I'm not going to have that feeling if you know, if I'm just at home and just chilling out. So it's like it can snowball as well, with what you're saying.
Yeah, that's a really good point, man. That's really worth mentioning as well right now, because obviously we're looking at the prospect of at some point reopening and going from, right, we're in lockdown, we're maybe living by ourselves or just seeing one or two other people, to okay, the whole world's out there again now all of a sudden, you know. And I think it's important that everybody kind of does that at their own pace, you know. But I'm sort of under no illusion that it's going to be harder for some than others, you know. It might not have even have been anything you experienced before COVID and before lockdown, but it might even, like you say, just be a stress response to, oh wow, I've got to go to this group, this gathering that's going to have 20 people there for the first time in what, 18 months, you know. Probably by the time we get there, you know, that's going to be stressful. But again, you know, being aware of like so sorry, what are you giggling at?
Gary in the chat, sorry man, I'm not giggling at you. Like
no, it's all right. No.
Just noticed what Gary said, mate, and he was just saying that I love a bit of social anxiety. I've not been on public transport in 18 years, and yeah, Gary, man, like I said, man, I can relate to that. And yeah, I get the same feeling when I have to go on public transport sometimes, and especially when COVID was just kicking in, mate. Like the amount of anxiety I had, like getting on public transport, then it was ruthless. Like really, it was brutal. So I can relate, mate.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Morning, guys. I never saw that comment go in there. Nice to have you in, buddy. Yeah. Do you know what the tube in London makes me like that?
Oh, mate, yeah,
Being on
same.
the tube, yeah. Like I'm not a claustrophobic person or anything like
Next
that.
level that though, isn't it? It's
Oh,
like
it is. It is. You've got to have it feels like you've got to have a degree to try and figure out the maps and where you're gonna end up and stuff like that.
I think it's because it's so far underground as well, so that like adds to it loads. I think.
And busy
Yeah,
isn't
busy
it? Like
underground. There's no windows. It's like it feels very, very claustrophobic.
that's got to be quite a stressful lifestyle to do that every day to and from work.
That mate, I don't know how people. I've got mates who live in like London, like working in central London, and like
Mhm.
it's like I don't. I mean, each to their own. Like whatever, like people want to do, but like I just
100%. Yeah.
for me, like I just can't imagine having that like kind of intense lifestyle and paying that much money for the luxury of having that much stress. So I just think it
Yeah.
seems for me it's not desirable.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, like you say, each to their own, and some people thrive for that sort of
Hmm.
hustling, bustling, busy metropolitan lifestyle.
Hmm.
But I'm sure even they would be the first to admit that it comes with certain elements of stress that you maybe's not going to get elsewhere.
Yeah.
Maybe corporate jobs that come with it as well, because work's a stress factor as well.
Hmm.
Isn't it? Depending on what it is that you're doing, especially through right now. It's easy for you to be doing a job that you don't even recognize from this time last year, just from maybe it has changed to work from home. Maybe the amount of people that you're dealing with has either dropped off or sort of taken off, depending on the
Hmm.
nature of the work. But yeah, stress is a really big factor on the heart, and I think certainly over the last year we've all probably everybody that I can think of has experienced just some form of higher level of stress because there's
Hmm.
been something to deal with. I don't know anybody who's been unaffected by the pandemic, like totally unaffected. Of course, it's affected different people differently, but we've all got our own challenges that we've had to rise to and sort of deal with it and overcome. And just before we move on, I know that it's easier to say than do, but sooner or later, stress needs dealing with and resolving in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And it's finding a way to channel it. That can be through exercise. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be through communication and talking and dealing with maybe his emotions and stuff like that. Um, it can be just finding a release. It can be a hobby. It can be just finding an outlet. It doesn't have to be someone who's necessarily going to dig into. It doesn't have to be like counseling or
Hmm.
therapy or anything like that. It could just be a friend that you feel confident talking to and relaying your problems to.
When we
That's
would,
all it takes.
so true, Rob. When we were doing staying connected, we'd hear from because we were like really preaching about that, like exactly what you're saying, mate. And one of the things like with statistics when we were looking for, like through those articles, it was like that finding a hobby can reduce the effects or like alleviate the effects of depression by up to like a third, which is like such a massive amount. And whatever it is, if you got a hobby, watching movies, playing video games, if you love that and that's your like safe haven, it can help you so much. And on that note, very briefly, started playing Witcher 3 and it's absolutely awesome. And I know Gary's in the chat and he might have experience playing that game because I know that he loved Cyberpunk and it's made by the same people, but
Yeah,
it's so good. It's
yeah.
the best game ever. But yeah, so that's basically that. Yeah.
That's it. It's funny you say that. We started that again about a month
No
ago.
way,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh
I got
man.
it when it first came out.
Yeah.
Um, and it was just such a big game. I got myself ready for what I thought was the last mission about 9 times, and I was like, it keeps going and it keeps going, and I fell off with it. So I got that long where I had to start it again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but it was the Netflix show that was like, right, we're gonna go back into that
Recall,
because my
yeah,
missus had never played it.
that's it.
Yeah, but like you say, buddy, absolutely anything like that that works as a release. That's not to say that say it's work that's stressing you out.
Hmm.
That's not to say that the first thing to maybe deal with is what's stressing you at work. If that's difficult or harder to address, can you work a switching off? from that stress when you're at home and when you've got a little bit of time for yourself. And like you say, buddy, that can be through gaming. It could be a big open world game that you can really throw yourself into and lose yourself,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
lose a whole weekend to.
Exactly.
It could be a good book. You can do exactly the same with a good book. It could be a hobby, do you like working with your hands, woodwork and stuff like that? Anything like that, anything that works as a bit of a
No,
release.
yeah, good
And
point. Yeah, it's a good
and
point. Yeah.
and when it comes to stress, I don't think we realize just how much of a long lasting effect it can have, especially while we're still feeling those sort of feelings of stress
Hmm.
as
Hmm.
well, and again, the more in depth you look at the heart, you realize how sort of intricate it is and how sort of fine tuned it is. It really is sort of like a very specialist piece of kit, and it needs looking after.
I totally agree, and I think that what we're saying is directly related to the heart, because whenever you do feel stressed, it's like I know that that's kind of like it's not exactly that, but it feels like you can feel it in your heart, and that's because you've got your raised blood pressure and so on, and it like so when you feel stressed, you feel like that does have like a strain on your heart, because your muscles start to feel tight, you feel like you're breathing heavy, and your heart rate's increased, so.
Yeah. Yeah, like have you ever that feeling where it literally feels like it's going to come out your chest?
Oh yeah.
I had that before, yeah, and it doesn't necessarily matter how fit you are. You can always push your heart to the point where it is going to work harder. But it just goes to show you why, like an athlete or an Olympian or something like that, their resting heart rate might be down to 40 beats per minute or something like that, because the heart is just so efficient.
Hmm.
It's almost in like cruise control when you're not exercising. It's like just, I can do this all day long. Do you know what I mean? This is easy. Um, Whereas obviously sort of someone like ourselves might be sort of between that 60 to 80 beats per minute range. Um, so yeah, that exercise has effects outside the exercise time as well. If you are exercising, you've got a healthy heart. Your heart's not only going to be more efficient during exercise, but just efficient day to day and sort of round the clock as well. Gary says Witcher 3, 500 hours deep, still got content to play. Mate, I can well believe it. I can well believe it. Apparently, the DLCs are as big as a full game as well. I've
Yeah,
never even got that far. I never even got that far. So best of luck, guys.
that's it. I've got a Game of the Year edition, so it's got both the DLCs, so I'm pretty stoked that I can. But
Yeah,
I'm not even. I'm like just like 4 or 5 hours into it, so there's a
yeah,
long way to go.
yeah. You're about 495 behind Gary then. Yeah.
Yeah,
Classy playing catch up, man.
yeah.
Right, let's get this diagram finished up
Do
then.
it, man.
So we've got step 6 is in front of us.
Hmm.
So the last one that we looked at, the oxygen is delivered to the muscles, it's gone to the body, and it's gone to everywhere that it needs to be. That's literally head to toe. That's and anything that sort of needs blood and oxygen. That is sort of where it's been and gone. So of course, before it can repeat the cycle, um, because of course that's what blood does. It just constantly sort of cycles around our system. Um, it's got to go back to the lungs to pick up more oxygen. So before it goes to the heart and starts the process again. But in order to get from the body to the lungs, it has to work its way back round to the heart and almost sort of get like pumped to the lungs.
Hmm.
So we sort of repeat the cycle, but on the other side, we can see from that blue arrow. So we've changed our pen color or swapped over the pencil or however you sort of differentiating the two, and we've changed over now because like I say, our blood has dropped off all the oxygen. And it's now like, right, how do I get back to the lungs? I've got to get back to the lungs, pick up some more oxygen and go again. So we're into the right atrium this time rather than the left atrium. Same again, we drop down into the right ventricle at the bottom, and then we're pumped out of the bottom back round to the lungs. The lungs obviously bringing the oxygen in through the air that we breathe, and then diffuses the oxygen into our blood. The blood obviously then picks up its oxygen and it becomes that red arrow again, and we're coming into that left atrium, and that's it. Cycle done. Nice and straightforward, really. Especially when you sort of break it down like this, and you can just see, right, oxygenated blood goes this way. This is where the deoxygenated blood goes. Hopefully that sort of helps you visualize that process a little bit more. Now that whole cycle only takes about a minute. For it to go from like, right, I'm in my lungs, I'm getting oxygen, or I'm in the heart, I'm around the body, back to the lungs to pick up more oxygen. It's about a minute,
Yeah.
which is quite fascinating. Really, it's a quick process. It really is a quick process. But then to think that it's doing that every minute, just forever. You know, as long as your heart's beating, you know. Again, it probably goes around a little bit faster when you're exercising and you're using the oxygen at a faster rate.
Yeah,
Definitely.
true.
Yeah, so we've got both sides of the heart shaded in now as well, so we can see that the right hand side, the right atrium and the right ventricle is dealing with the deoxygenated blood, and everything on the left hand side is dealing with oxygenated blood. And of course, now we can see why it's important that the two of them don't cross over. You know, why that septum is so important down the middle. You know, we don't want deoxygenated blood seeping back over into the side that's about to go around the body, you know, because then you're delivering blood that's got no oxygen to deliver itself, you know, so your muscles are expecting oxygen being delivered and you've pretty much sent it a dud, you know, you've sent it something that it can't use, mixed in with stuff that it can use, because obviously it's going to be mixed in with everything else in the left ventricle, but it's not going to be as high quality, you know, and your sort of your ability and your physical ability is going to suffer because of that, really. But yeah, we can see, like we say, a cycle sort of complete. So let's get a little bit more in depth with just a couple of the smaller bits that play a part. But hopefully we're making sense so far, guys. If it's not and you need me to slow down and just go over anything again, please just let us know. Drop us in the chat.
Just drop a message in the chat and then we'll
definitely.
sort that out.
If you're watching it back, just drop me an email. As always, you know, happy to help with that as well. Okay, so we've broken down just a couple of, like I say, some more of the it's more the blood vessels that we're going to be looking at, you know, what carries the blood. We know where the blood goes, we know where it's going, and we now know how long the whole thing takes. And it's just them little blood vessels that play a part as well. So same again, start the process at the lungs, and we're bringing that oxygenated blood in, and we've got what we call the pulmonary vein.
Mm-hmm.
So pulmonary, somewhere down the line from Latin, translates to sort of respiratory, sort of like to do with the lungs. So if you hear anything to do, if you hear the word pulmonary, it's safe to assume that it is to do with the lungs in some way. Not jumping ahead too far, but we can see that from the right ventricle, so the bottom left hand box, the artery that brings the deoxygenated blood back to the lungs is also pulmonary. Yeah, that's the pulmonary artery. So we can see pulmonary is to do with the lungs, or in this case, to or from the lungs. Because that's probably one of the words that we're going to come across today that you might not have sort of ran into before. So that's the way that I remember that one. Okay, so then we've through the pulmonary vein into the left atrium, down into the left ventricle. Now we've got valves, not only sort of in your veins and in your arteries and stuff like that, but between the atriums and the ventricles as well. And then valves are designed to only allow the blood to go one way, you know, because as the heart contracts, it squeezes blood through. As it expands again, it would naturally create a bit of a vacuum and try and suck blood back over, you know, which is, of course, we want it to be a one-way street because it's got a job to go and do. So them valves actually stop the sort of backflow of blood. Now, if you've ever heard of anybody getting a valve transplant,
yeah,
that is literally what that is. That is taking the valve out, and we can take them out of pig hearts now. Wow. We can take valves out where at that point scientifically, yeah, where we can use valves and parts from pig hearts, and actually use them in human hearts as well. You know, it's crazy. You know, it really is. You know, the future is now, mate. The future is now. But you know, them valves again. It's a really small part, and all it takes is, you know, cloggy sort of fats and stuff like that, and other obstructions getting in the way, and we can really soon be facing serious health problems. Right. You know, just from blockages in veins or in them valves as well. You know, because I mean, if the valve can't open at all and let anything through, there's nothing going, nothing's getting oxygen, and that is pretty much like it's the highway to getting blood to everywhere, including your brain. Yeah. You know, we can't have total blockages at the end of the day. the end of the day, like a clot, not necessarily in the heart, but a clot anywhere really, is what can lead to like a stroke and
Oh
stuff
wow.
like that, because it might be, we've got a clot, the oxygen can't get through, so that is where maybe sort of like the brain damage effects from the likes of a stroke come from. Just lack of oxygen for however long, if you're lucky enough to survive, because not everybody's that fortunate as well. Again, it's these little intricate parts that we probably wouldn't even think about, that are making such a big difference. So again, it's important that we're taking care of them. So we're in the left ventricle, we flow through that one-way system of valves, and then we're going to go to the aorta, which is the if you only ever remember the name of one artery, make this the one that you remember, because it's the biggest in the body, it's the main one. We can see from here that it sort of pumps the blood out to the body.
Yeah.
And on this diagram, it looks like just, again, sort of like a one-way street. But of course, it's got loads of different parts of the body that it's got to hit. It's got to go upwards to the brain and sort of to everything above your shoulders. It's got to go all the way down to your toes and into your legs as well. So that actually branches off into loads of different branches, to get the blood round everywhere that it needs to, really. But yeah, it's all sort of the aorta, or especially at the start, or just like sort of near that left ventricle. The aorta pumps it all out, and then it splits into different arteries. That'll all have their own sort of different names and stuff that we don't really need to focus on too much. So then we're round to the body again. We've delivered through all these different branches. We've delivered the oxygen where it needs to be. So then again, in order to come back into the right atrium, we need to sort of bottleneck all of these different veins now, bringing deoxygenated blood back. All these different veins need to sort of merge into one or two, and then we get the vena cava, or the vena cava. Depends how you pronounce it. I guess it depends how posh you are, if it's cava or cava. Yeah. But it sooner or later comes into eventually two. We've got the vena cava, superior and inferior. Superior comes from up above and leads back in. Inferior comes from down below and leads back in again to that right atrium. Goes through the same process, drops down into the right ventricle, and then, like I mentioned earlier on, we're into that pulmonary artery. Again, pulmonary to do with the lungs. Okay, we're working our way back round to the lungs now. We're picking up oxygen again, and again the whole sort of cycle is complete. So we've got those four, really, them four major sort of blood vessels that we need to remember, either bringing stuff to the heart or from the heart. Because again, those are all part of the cycle.
Yeah.
And that's where we're talking. I'm talking about blockages and stuff like that, and eating the wrong sorts of fats. It is worth mentioning that, just because I think certainly through media and through society, we're kind of scared now of the word fat, or fats in general.
True.
Or they're sort of demonized. We're sort of told to fear them and trained to fear them. Whereas, we look at it when we go into the nutritional side of things. We need good fats, so we need fats in general, in our diet. It helps with the uptake of hormones. It helps with insulation a little bit as well.
Yep.
Helps with that little bit of padding.
Of course, yeah.
Either sort of between organs, which of course you don't want too much of. Otherwise, that's where you can actually get like sort of fatty organs without necessarily being fat on the outside, or have much fat showing on the outside. But it's good fats that we do need, because good fats are good for the heart.
Yeah.
They help this process work, and they don't cause them sort of blockages and stuff like that. So again, we need good fats rather than bad fats. It's not a case of staying away from fats altogether and being scared of fats. It is just a case of, and again, something we can look forward to next week. We can actually look at where we can get good fats and where we can get fat in our diet that we don't need to be scared of.
Yeah.
Because again, the veins, the arteries, all of these blood vessels that we're looking at on this last step, they're just as affected by bad diet as the heart itself, in the chambers of the heart as well. So we've that'll do us for our diagram.
Sure.
If you do want to pause it there and take a minute and, like I say, just get caught up or put any finishing touches on, by all means do. If not, that'll do us for that. Hopefully, you know, that just helps you, like I say, sort of visualize the whole process that's going on. And like I say, it just gives you something to come back and revise as well. You know, if you do want to come back over something, or if you do want to sort of have a refresher, rather than just Google a diagram of a heart and you've got to try and figure out what all the different bits are. You know, you've labelled this yourself. No one's going to be able to understand it better than you, hopefully. So just keep it somewhere handy where you can come back to.
No doubt, yeah.
Because, of course, again, you know, when we're talking about going through the workbooks and stuff like that, it's not an exam, it's not a memory test. You can come back and you can revise and you can revisit the material as well. Okay, cool. So let's roll on then. So we've got a heart quiz to do. But before we move on and look at a little bit more at sort of like the lungs and the respiratory system. So yeah, we've got 10 questions. All we're going to do, just have a guess, you know, if there's anything you're not sure of, but just on your piece of paper that you've got, maybe flip it over if you want, or grab a separate one if you're really proud of your heart diagram and you want to keep it pristine. Maybe just grab a second bit of paper. I know I would be. But we'll go through. I'll read the questions out. We'll maybe spend a minute on each one, and then we'll go through them all together. Like I say, and we'll just spend a little bit of time just discussing each one as we go through before we move on. Okay, cool. So some of them I've actually, if we've been listening, I've actually given you the answers to this morning. I've maybe sprinkled a couple of freebies in there as well. So why not? We'll see how we get on. Okay, cool, guys. Like I say, if you would rather just chuck an answer in the chat, you know, by all means do, and we can bounce some ideas around in there. Okay, let's get it done then. Let's get a look at that first question. So our first question that we've got, how many chambers are there in the heart? You know, so we've spoke about the heart's divided into different sort of sections, different chambers. They're not all necessarily the same size as we've maybe drawn them. But how many were there? You know, how many different chambers have we got in the heart? Again, if me and Daniel start moving through these questions a little bit quick and you want a second just to think about them, again, just hit that pause button and catch up whenever suits you.
Yeah.
Okay, so spinning on. Second question. What do you call the top two chambers of the heart? What do we call the top two? Yeah. Same again. You know, if you've finished your diagram, you can maybe go back to your diagram and use that for these as well. But what do we call the top two? And added bonus, if you can think of a sort of unique way to remember how to remember what we call the ones at the top and the ones at the bottom. Because of course finding little ways like that could be really helpful for just making the information stick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Big elephants can always understand small elephants.
Exactly. Do you know what? I've forgotten all about that. Yeah. There you go. Prime example. Anything like that works. And then next question we've got, what do we call the bottom two chambers? So exactly the same. You know, can we think of a way to differentiate between each one? And think about like we say, just ways of remembering what's the top and which ones are at the bottom. Okay, so what prevents next question, what prevents the backflow of blood? Yeah, you know, we've talked about we want it to be a one-way street, and the oxygen's got somewhere that it needs to be. We don't want the old two steps forward, one step back. It's got to be a one-way street. But what actually helps us? Well, what is in place to make sure that the blood can't start to flow back over? Okay, next question. So we've got what separates the two sides of the heart? Yeah, you know, so again, we mentioned how important it is that we don't have sort of one side passing over to or leaking over into the other. It is actually a condition that some people have and live with, and they've obviously got to be a lot more careful when they're exercising and stuff like that. But yeah, sort of like a holy septum in your heart can can start to develop, and it, like I say, it is something that the people are living with. So, what separates the two sides of the heart? Okay, next one, rolling on them, blasting through these. When blood enters the heart from the lungs, which side of the heart does it enter? Yeah. Now think about it, not as you looking at the diagram that you've drawn, but if it was your heart. When it enters the lungs, what side of the heart does it enter? Cool. Okay, next question. When blood enters the heart from the body, is the blood oxygenated or deoxygenated? So it's entering the heart from the body. Yeah, so we're thinking about, is it carrying oxygen or is it not? Is it on its way to deliver oxygen, or is it working its way back to the lungs to pick some more oxygen up? What do we think, guys? Okay, number 8, I think. What is the job of the largest artery in the body, the aorta? Yeah, so it was one of them. It was one of them 4 major blood vessels that we looked at or talked about. What's its job? What does it do? Why is it so important? I think if it's the largest, it's got to have a pretty important job. What is the job of the aorta? What does it do? Okay, 2 questions to go, and some of these are a little bit out there, so I've put some. I've made them multiple choice. I've made them multiple choice for this morning. So, how many times do you think your heart beats in a lifetime? So we've got 2.5 million, 2.5 billion, or 2.5 trillion. Yeah, so this is obviously average human. How many times does your heart beat in a lifetime? If anybody wants to do any quick maths, remember that we talked about a normal resting heart rate would probably be about 80 beats per minute. Any Stephen Hawkins out there? Off you go with that one. Yeah, I'm sure. It's a lot anyway. It's a lot. Okay, and the last question that we've got: how many gallons of blood does your heart pump each day? So we've got 800 gallons, 1,000 gallons, or 2,000 gallons. Yeah, and just out of curiosity, I'm going to convert that to liters. Gallon to liter. Gallon. So 1 gallon is 4.5 liters. Yeah, so we've got how many liters? So we've got 3,500 liters. Yeah, 4,500 liters, or the last one will be 9,000 liters. Yeah, yeah. So even the smallest one of them is a lot of blood to be going around your system every single day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll do us there then. So just while the guys are having a minute, that's reminded me of something that you mentioned last time we did this, buddy, actually, and that is the sort of blood pressure and where, if you were to nick an artery or an area closer to the heart, you know, that is where you're going to see the blood. Like, you know, like you'll see on a film where the blood will be like spurting. Yeah, spurting. It's actually like that's quite realistic.
Wow.
You know, depending on where you were sort of or where the cut was. You know, I know that there's one sort of in your leg. I think the femoral artery, where if you cut that, you can literally bleed out in minutes.
Yeah.
It's surprising how much blood we've got. You know, it really is. But yeah, that was something interesting that you've mentioned. Yeah, even just in sort of like, yeah, if you were to make an incision closer to the heart, of course the pressure, because you're closer to the source of the pressure, which is the heart beating, it's going to be driving through with just that much more pressure.
Yeah.
You know, which is why again that artery might actually be a little bit thicker as well. When you look at the wall of the actual blood vessel, it'll be a little bit thicker than most.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. We always see in war movies when someone gets hit in the artery or something and like bleed out.
Yeah, Yeah, it's like, of course, depending where it is, like I say, some of them you see are really realistic, and like I say, it's actually got the pulse to it. And then you've got the other end of the spectrum where there's one episode of, can you remember the TV show called Bottom with
Yeah,
Rick
of
Mail
course.
and,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Ed
yeah.
Edmondson? Oh, mate, there's one episode where I think it's a Christmas special where he just takes the tip of his finger off cutting Christmas dinner. And it's comically just spurting everywhere, mate. The apartment's wrecked.
That's
Oh man,
yeah.
comedy gold, like comedy gold.
That was the thing
Um,
with Bottom. It was them two beating each other up, and yeah, and it was great. Yeah, there was some really funny like slapstick episodes.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. Well, that's the thing. If you like slapstick, it's held up really well.
yeah,
It does hold up really well. You can watch it now and still have a giggle and stuff like that's funny because of course how ridiculous that is at the idea of just nicking the end of your finger and then you go and wake your housemate up on Christmas Day and you blood all over his bed and stuff like that. But
well,
you
yeah,
know, some of them really are quite accurate, and like I
yeah.
say, depending on where the sort of the cut or the laceration is, um like I say, you can lose a lot of blood really quickly. Okay then, right, let's blast through these answers then. So um right. So yeah, buddy, I don't mind if you want to just stay on that last slide rather than going back through each of them
Yeah,
as
no,
we
it's
do.
good. Yeah, okay.
Whatever's easier for you, man, to be honest.
Yeah,
Okay, but we'll get these blasted through. So how many chambers are there in the heart was our first question. Of course, if we've got our diagram in front of us, we can look at that and we can see that we've got our 4 chambers. Yeah, we've got 2 on the left, 2 on the right. Yeah, four chambers. They're not necessarily the same size. You tend to find that atriums at the top are bigger than like the lower chambers. And it's more just to do with function and stuff like that. The bottom one's obviously more to do with sort of like driving the blood out. But just for the sake of simplicity, certainly on our diagram we've drawn them the same. Okay, so the next question was, what do we call the top 2? Obviously I just mentioned there that we've got our atrium at the top. I've got the left atrium and the right atrium. The way that I remember them, I don't know if anybody got anything different. An atrium normally in sort of in a building, if you've ever heard of an atrium, it's normally a building with or a structure with the roof missing, so it's like open plan, open ceiling sort of thing. So I remember that being at the heart or at the top, sorry, because it has to be open at the top for the blood to flow into it. That's the way that I remember it anyway. Like I say, you might come up with something that's a little bit different for yourself, but that's the way I remember it. Blood has to flow in from the top. So it's sort of like that is where the term for the atrium comes from. So we've got the atrium at the top. Next question was, what do we call the bottom 2 chambers? And those are the ventricles. Yeah, and if we can use process of elimination, atrium's at the top, ventricles have got to be at the bottom. Now, like I say, those are the chambers that are responsible for forcing the blood sort of out and to wherever it's going to go. And yeah, those are ventricles at the bottom. Just while we're on about looking at sort of left and right hand side, the next question. Oh no, sorry, it wasn't. The next question was to do with the backflow. Sorry, so we'll just do that one quick. And that was our valves. Our valves to make sure it is like a one-way street. They're very similar to if you get like a drink from McDonald's and they've got the plastic lid.
Yes.
The bit that you put your straw through. Just like them little sort of them little flaps. They look very similar to that, and they really do.
Hope they work
and
on those.
yeah, I'm sure, yeah, definitely. But yeah, they will just sort of open up and then close back to that sort of default shape, And when you hear your heart beating, it's a combination of the contraction mixed with them valves actually opening and closing. That's what you can actually that is what you can hear. Okay, the next question was what separates the two sides of the heart, and that was the septum. You know, we were saying sort of like in the nose to separate one side from the other. We've got that septum. It's like a really thick wall of muscle, making sure that nothing gets from one side to the other.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to ask somebody where their heart is, you know, you might be inclined to say over to the left hand side. If you were to say check your heartbeat on your chest, you probably would have your hand a little bit more over to the left hand side than central.
Yeah.
Your heart actually does sit in the really central in your chest. You know, right behind your sternum. Um, Obviously, because we talked about last week, that sternum actually gives a lot of protection for your heart and your lungs. Now, the reason that you feel the beat stronger on the left hand side is because not only is your heart kind of a little bit lopsided to the left, but you think it's the left hand side that needs to do the pumping to send the blood around the body. So the left hand side actually contracts that little bit harder. So that is why the beat or the pulse is stronger on the left hand side. So although the heart does sit really central, it's a little bit lopsided, and yeah, it's that left hand side contracting harder that gives the impression that the heart's actually located over to the left hand side.
Interesting, man.
Yeah, I thought it was quite interesting. Like certainly as I was coming across it for the first time, because I mean, like I say, normally I think that's the first place you would think of for your heart, wouldn't it be? Where do you put your hand when you do the national anthem? You know,
Exactly.
Hand on your heart. You know, it's not central; it's over to the left hand side. Which I thought was really interesting. I'd seen a fact this morning that I'm just going to double check on because I want to make sure I definitely get it bang on. But it was something to do with oh yeah, when we were talking about sort of like muscle thickness and stuff like that, and one side beating harder than the left hand side, or the left hand side beating harder. Sorry, something that I hadn't even thought about. In a giraffe, right? This is going to sound so random. In a giraffe, the left ventricle is so much thicker than the right, because again, coming from that that's it's the left hand side that's working to pump blood around the body and get it everywhere that it's got to go. How far does a giraffe have to pump blood to get up to its head?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Pretty crazy, right? Yeah.
Up its neck. It's such a long way that yeah, the giraffes, the left hand side of a giraffe's heart is so much thicker than the right hand side. You know, which I hadn't even thought about really from a circulation point of view.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because if you look how long the neck is, obviously it has to go all the way up there and back down. So it's a really good point.
Yeah, you know, our left hand side is only got to get it up to our brain without the help of gravity a little bit, really. You know, if you didn't have blood pressure, all your blood would just drop to your sort of lower extremities and would sort of pool in your feet. Which is actually something that happens to bodybuilders pre-show. They take a tablet, or some of them to choose to take a tablet that thins your blood and helps with sort of vascularity and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
But if they don't sit with their feet elevated, it just pulls in the legs, which is really dangerous, and again, it can be fatal. People have actually died through it.
Wow.
But yeah, without blood pressure, all your blood would just sink pretty much at the end of the day. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting with the giraffe. And another one that I'd seen, I don't know why I've gone full Dr. Dolittle this week, but apparently there's a shrew out there, or like a little small rodent, and you know, we're saying that sort of like at most our heart rate might get up to about 180 beats per minute.
Yep.
This shrew, this one type of rodent, 1,200 beats a minute.
Whoa.
Permanently throughout its entire life. Like its heart must sound like it's humming. Yeah, it's got to sound like it's got yeah. It's in fact, how many would that be a second? 1,200 divided by 60, 20 a second. 20 beats a second.
Oh my goodness.
That has got to sound like it's humming. I don't know how they don't have the ability to hover at that height. I don't know how they've not got like some kind of hovering ability. Pretty much, yeah, pretty much.
Do you reckon that it's just on edge all the time?
Do you know what? If it's not, I would hate to see it when it is faced by that flight or fight response. If it sees a cat, if it sees a cat or something like that, I don't know how it wouldn't explode. I'm like, I really don't. And you've got to think, obviously, from a just from a physical point of view, how much smaller is that heart than ours?
It's crazy, isn't it?
You know, yeah. On average, you know, your own heart is probably around about the size of your own fist. If you did want to sort of visualize how big your heart might be, you can use your fist as a good indicator.
I'd love to know what the resting heart rate of like a sloth or something is, where it spends like 22 hours just like totally like sedentary. I bet.
Yeah, it's been some of us through lockdown, that mate.
Yeah.
Resting heart rate of a sloth. Right, let's have a look at this before we finish up these last couple of questions. I'm going to be armed with all the useless knowledge coming out today. I can't find a quick answer. That might be one to report back on. That might be one to report back on. That might be a little bit of investigating rather than just Googling. Not used to Google not just having the answer straight away these days.
I know, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we've done that one where it's the septum that separates both sides of the heart. So the next one was when the blood enters the heart from the lungs, which side of the heart does it enter? So if we break the cycle down a little bit, it's coming from the lungs. So it's got to have oxygen. And we know that oxygenated blood, again, we can look at our diagram and use our key. We can see that the oxygenated blood comes into the left-hand side. Although it would be on the right-hand side as we look at the diagram, it comes into what we would call the left atrium at the top. And then, of course, it kicks in through the rest of the cycle there. So it enters the left-hand side from the lungs. So if that's from the lungs and it's coming into the left-hand side, we can sort of break it down and look at the next question. We say when blood enters the heart from the body, is it oxygenated or deoxygenated? So if it's coming from the body, I mean, it's safe to assume, that it's delivered the oxygen that it needs and it's working its way back to the lungs to pick up more. So it's going to be deoxygenated. It's not actually carrying any oxygen at all. It's kind of no good to you again until it has picked up. Like I say, being round and picked up that oxygen again. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, last few. So the job of the artery, or the largest artery in the body, being the aorta, is to pump the blood, or the oxygenated blood, to where it needs to be. You know, that is going to be sort of like the main highway from the heart, and it's going to branch off into all those different branches, all them different sort of little side roads, if you want to think about it that way, and get the blood to where it needs to be. But that is the aorta's job, and that is why the blood pressure is as strong there as you're going to find it anywhere else in the body, and it'll sort of dissipate as it gets further around the cycle. Okay, so having to punt at some of these multiple choice ones if we weren't entirely sure. How many times does your heart beat in a lifetime? 2.5 million, 2.5 billion, or 2.5 trillion. It's 2.5 billion.
Wow.
Which is a lot. You know, 2.5 million sounds like a lot, but then you think, okay, like 80 beats a minute. Every minute, every hour, every day, every week, for however long you're alive, it's soon gonna add up. 2.5 billion. And you know, to think about the difference between a million and a billion in itself as well, you know, it's the old saying, is it, that the wealthy use the difference between a million and a billion is essentially a billion. It's a massive number, it really is, and that is a lot of. And again, you think the more strain you're putting on your heart, it accumulates. You know, every time your heart is struggling, you know, a few beats, a few minutes, a few days, it's not going to have such a big effect. But as we're getting up into these numbers, you know, you might be talking about years of stress, you know, then you are talking into sort of hundreds of thousands, potentially even millions of beats where your heart's struggling, you know, and like you were saying earlier on, buddy, you know, stress is designed to be temporary. Stress on the heart is certainly designed to be temporary. And it's sort of like a byproduct of our lifestyles a little bit more now, where that stress is prolonged, which is why we're starting to see the health effects. Not only that, but we're living longer as well. You know, science helps us live longer. We've got a longer life expectancy now, so we can see sort of, not only as we get to ages where cancer and stuff like that's going to be a little bit more prominent, and seeing that becoming a little bit more sort of prominent, but sort of like heart problems as well, you know, and seeing how sort of like into older age how the heart works, and like I say, how important it is that we sort of maintain it and look after it. So yeah, 2.5 billion beats in a lifetime.
Crazy.
Which is pretty insane, yeah. And then gallons of blood that your heart pumps every day. The last question. So we had 800 gallons, 1,000 gallons, or 2,000 gallons. And it's 2,000 gallons, which is essentially what did I say? Like 9,000 liters.
Yeah.
Something like that. So picture your 2-liter bottle of pop. 4,500 of them every day.
Madness.
Yeah. Yeah, and same again, it just highlights where even one little obstacle in the way, a little blockage here, a little bit of an obstruction there, a little bit of a narrower blood vessel there, it's going to have that sort of knock-on effect that, as I say, will only sort of accumulate and get worse with time as well, you know. But again, you know, it sort of highlights why we can lose as much blood as quick as we do, because we're pumping that much round at such a pace, really.
Yeah.
You know, it is quite a lot to say that it doesn't have any downtime. You know, your brain rests when you're asleep. Other muscles rest when you're resting, and you know, you're not as active. Your heart, it'll slow down, but it'll never switch off. It can't really, you know. Interesting one, just before we move on from the heart, your heart has actually got its own electrical system, so it's kind of got its own pulse. So separated from the brain, it could still work, which is why we can do certain heart transplants and keep it alive. You know, we can maintain a heart across long distances to ship it and transport it a lot easier than we can a brain. You know, a brain will die with the lack of oxygen, whereas a heart, has got its own electrical current, really, that will sort of maintain itself, which is where sort of like an irregular heartbeat comes from. That might be a problem with that sort of current and that sort of pace. And if you've got a pacemaker, you know, that's why they'll tell you to watch out for like the metal scanners at airports and stuff like that, because that's all it takes is a little bit of something to interfere with the sort of current of the heart, and again, you can get heart problems from there as well. Okay, I reckon that'll about do us for the heart then. So we've looked at sort of the system as a whole, and we've seen that we need just be stopping off at the lungs to pick up oxygen, and to go back and get oxygen to deliver to the system. But it's helpful to know sort of how the oxygen gets from out here to in here as well, you know. How does it get to the point where the blood can come along and just sort of pick it up, you know, sort of almost like it's waiting at the bus stop. It's just sort of like, right, oxygen's ready to go, and the blood just comes along and sort of sweeps it up. So how does it get there? How does it get to that point? And that's the next thing that we're going to look at. So if just trying to check up with the chat as well. So yeah, we've got the lungs. So yeah, blood needs to stop off at the lungs to become oxygenated before it goes to the heart to be pumped around the body. How does oxygen go from being inhaled to in your blood and ready to be sent around the body? Yeah, so we've got a little diagram on the next slide that's just going to help us try and make sense of that as well. So we've got, after we breathe in sort of through our mouth, normally through our like our nasal passage more often than not, which we can see sort of highlighted by the top of the pinker areas on the guys where his nose and his mouth would be. The air that we breathe in passes through our pharynx, which is the bottom of that pink bit, and the larynx, which is the purple bit, and into our trachea. Yeah, which is obviously like the next little bit down from there. This then splits into two and gives us what we call bronchi. So like obviously we can see just from the picture, one goes to the left lung, one goes to the right lung. And that is obviously we're just breathing in down to the lungs. If you take a deep breath, you know, you can almost feel your lungs expand. You can feel your rib cage expand maybe as well. I'm sure it's something that you know you'll have focused on in yoga and stuff like that. Breathe in and feeling the movement and stuff like that. You can actually use you breathe in to help you stretch as well, you know, because just breathing in is going to expand things and maybe force it into, force might be the wrong word, coax it into a position that's going to feel good and give you a bit of a release. We don't like to force anything if your body doesn't want it to go. We don't like to force.
It's like what, like they say, like you want to be as relaxed as possible in yoga, right? It's like just like forcing into like a position.
Yeah. I've definitely done some yoga sessions that aren't the most relaxing in the
Oh, not
world.
at all, man.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, certainly when it comes to your
Yeah.
breathing,
Yeah,
and
they say breathe into the stretches, right? But it's like
yeah,
sometimes you're like,
yeah.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, I'm struggling to breathe at all. Never mind breathe into
yeah,
the stretch. Yeah. You know, but though there's your lungs inflating like a balloon pretty much, you know. And like I say, when you take a deep breath, you can feel that happening. So yeah, we've sort of breathed in, and the trachea splits into the two branches or the two bronchi, and then if we can just roll on to the next slide, buddy. Next couple of steps. So we've got the same again, like tree branches, or exactly the same as sort of like your veins and your arteries work in your body, but this is transporting air and oxygen rather than blood or liquids. It branches off into thousands of little passages or little tubes, and coming off the bronchi, these are what we call bronchioles, and that is where the oxygen's goes again going to sort of pass into, and then at the end of these branches, sort of like almost like little air sacs, we've got alveoli, which is where the air goes into. These air sacs fill, and it is in the cell wall of these air sacs that the blood can actually come along and start to absorb the oxygen into your bloodstream. Those alveoli are designed to allow the sort of diffusion or the transfer of gases and stuff like that, you know. So it's really interesting actually how that works. We don't need to go into it in too much detail, but it's almost like oxygen and these particles and these cells, they move to the side of least resistance.
yeah,
So if you've got a few in the bloodstream that are so obviously you've got the bloodstream coming around deoxygenated, and then in the lungs is oxygenated, obviously because we breathed in and it's in these sacs ready to go. The transfer kind of happens automatically because the deoxygenated blood automatically wants to move its way across, which sort of in turn triggers the oxygenated blood going the other way. You know, it's almost like a magnetic effect where like never the two different ends will touch. Bringing one lot over sends some the other way. And like I say, that is how we get that transfer, you know, because of course, not only does the oxygen need to go into the bloodstream, but the carbon dioxide from the deoxygenated blood needs to come back into the lungs so we can breathe it out, you know, because we've got that waste product that we need to get rid of as well. And like I say, that's almost like it's almost like a straight up trade. You know, we don't want to be over here. We don't want to be over here. Let's swap. And like I say, to say that, again, it's a really complicated system. So it comes back to a question that we certainly don't have time for, and that's is it this way by total accident?
oh yeah,
You know,
it's
or is the human body the way that it is by design? And I certainly don't have time to talk about that today. And I'm by no means an expert on that side of things. But you know, it is really interesting to just see how sort of fine tuned some of these little processes are, and how specialist they are really. You know, each little part of your body's got its own job that it needs to do. And we can see from the last slide, just with that diagram on that, yeah, that's how the carbon dioxide is going to come back over into our lungs, ready to be exhaled. Because of course we don't really have a use for it. Certainly at that point we don't anyway. Cool, right? So that'll about do us for the respiratory system. Which there's a couple of questions to do in the workbook again this week. So if we just finish up these last few slides, Daniel, do you have the workbook there just to sort of pull up, just spend 10 minutes on and look and see what the work's going to be for this week? Spot on, buddy. Excellent. Cheers. So, yeah, we'll just finish up these last couple of slides. Again, it's something that we're going to look at in further weeks, but thinking about the muscular system and the muscles that we have, I think that our first sort of our first reference might be a muscle that you can tense, in a mirror, be it a bicep, be it a, I don't know, be it even just like a quad muscle, tensing your legs up, tensing up your thigh muscle. But we've actually got a lot of muscle in our body that we don't realize or even necessarily have any control over.
Yeah.
And that the heart is one of them. The heart is one of them, and the heart is what we call cardiac muscle. Like I say, it's got its own sort of electrical pulse. It works by itself. It's involuntary. You don't have to tell your heart to beat. You can control maybe how fast it is beating, but you can't switch it on or off like you might do with a bicep. And engage a bicep. So we've actually got different groups of muscles. We've got, like I say, our cardiac muscle. We've got our smooth muscle, which we're going to look at in a future session. We kind of looked at a little bit last week when we were looking at our organs, because that's pretty much what our organs are made up of. Smooth muscle, you don't necessarily need to tell your kidneys to work.
Yeah, true.
And you couldn't tense a kidney. Nor would I recommend it. But they're still muscle at the end of the day. And like I say, a bar being involuntary and you can't really control them. And they are smooth rather than the sort of stripy or striated muscles that you'd see sort of on the skeleton. Which we're going to get a look at in a second. So when we talk about muscles, it's not all necessarily sort of the ones that you might think of. Where in this case, it's going to be just while we take a little bit of time and just look at, like I say, just look at the different muscles that we can tense and engage. And we can actually see from that image that we've got up on the screen there. I don't know if you can zoom in just a tiny bit, buddy. Actually, just on the bionic man there, just so we can see. You can actually see what we call striation in the muscle, which is the direction that the muscle fibers are running, and it almost looks like stringy. Same again. If that image doesn't show it very well, or you're still not quite sure, just to go on Google and type in skeletal muscle or muscle striation or something like that, and it might just highlight that a little bit more for you. But that in itself gives us an idea which way the muscles move. So it's handy to, if we can picture what a muscle looks like, where it is, where it ends, we can get an idea what's like maybe is a healthy range of motion for that muscle. We can see just from that diagram that what we would call the pectoral muscles across the chest, they sort of run side to side, which is why we can stretch them by doing a press up. We're pulling that way, and contracting the other way and sort of driving through. And if you get an idea where the pectoral muscle stops working, you can realize where you want your chest exercise to end. Same again, it's not something that we need to go into too much depth on. I think it's just the PT and is coming out. But it's so easy to fall into the habit of, right, I'm going to move this weight from point A to point B, rather than, right, I'm trying to move this muscle from its starting point to its end point. Yeah. Which is, of course, the way that we develop a muscle, which is why if you were to say maybe it's dropped too low on a chest press, then you get to the point where maybe your front shoulder muscle takes over, because you're actually out of the range where your pec muscles or your chest muscles can apply any significant force. So your body has to recruit maybe a front delt or a front shoulder muscle, which isn't as big, it's not as strong. That's not designed to work through that range either. And you're not only not working the muscle to its fullest, but you're working and potentially damaging other muscles as well.
It's a really good take, I think, because there's a lot of paranoia in the gyms about, like, the kind of bravado of like, oh, you need to make sure that you go low enough, or you need to make sure you lock out, because that's a quote unquote proper rep or whatever. But then obviously there's the opposite side of the coin, what you're saying, where like you could literally go too far if you're doing like dumbbell press or something. You could go beyond what's using your pec, and then, as you say, your shoulder or something, right?
Yeah. What I used to see quite a lot of was like a dip, like someone doing dips, but sort of tilted forward a little bit as well, so they're almost like chest over. And what you'll see is obviously down to a certain point, it's very sort of chest orientated, very sort of chest dominant. And then you get so low where your triceps take over, and that's all well and good if you've got that planned into your workout as part chest and part tricep exercise. But if you're treating it as just a chest isolation exercise, and then you go heavy on your triceps and do the exercises you try and do on your triceps, you've maybe already tired them out and burned them
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
You might not get as much out of them as you'd like to, So again, being aware where these muscles are and sort of how far they stretch just gives you an idea how far you might like you say want an exercise to go,
Hmm.
or certainly like a range. Um, so we can see that obviously that there's a lot of muscle there and that they sort of overlap, they sit alongside each other. There's going to be a lot of muscles that I'm sure you've heard of before, be it your abs, which is your abdominal muscles. um Interesting one about your abs is rather than just like one sheet of muscle with your six-pack on, because we do all have them. They're all there, for all the jokes that I've heard over the years. Oh, I haven't got a six pack.
Mm.
Those muscles are there. It's just a case of how visible they are, and that comes down to your body composition at the end of the day. Which is why doing all the sit ups in the world won't give you a six pack if you've got even just really a moderate level of body fat. And that's why they say that abs are made in the kitchen rather than in the gym. You know, because that's the only thing that's going to bring them through. But it's rather than just one sheet of muscle, you actually have two strips that run sort of side by side and not necessarily symmetrical either.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen anybody on fitness videos or whatever where they might have a six pack, but three on one side might be a little bit higher than the
Oh
three
yeah,
on the other
totally.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's those it's just the way that those muscles sit on some people.
Is that like obviously the certain like growth of muscles is like genetic, right? So like if you've genetically got asymmetrical abs, that would probably affect your chances at like, Mr. Olympia or something if you're a bodybuilder, right? Because they would
100%.
probably because they would look at that and they would be like, oh, the abs are asymmetrical, but like the person can't help that though, right? Like it's like
Well, exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And you think about it like from the point of that person can't help it. You
Hmm.
know, I'm an ectomorph at the end of the day. I've got no decision over that. If I get myself up on
Yeah.
stage for Mr. Olympia, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. When the name of the game is, it's one of the things that they say they're going to mark on is symmetry.
Yeah.
It's one of them things where you just think, okay, maybe um again, if it's a passion and it's something you love and it's not all about winning, go do it. Do you know what I
Mm.
mean? Who's going to stop you? Um, but at the same time, that sort of genetic or that sort of predisposition, it's not going to affect your ability to exercise, to be active, to be fit, to do stuff like CrossFit, training at the gym. You can still be active and probably arguably healthier than somebody who is doing Mr. Olympia,
Mm.
because we've got to remember that these aren't specimens of peak health. Certainly on the day that they get on stage, they're probably quite depleted and malnourished.
Yeah.
Again, yeah, it probably would put you at a bit of a disadvantage, and that sort of thing you're probably going to lose marks for straight away. That sort of thing, Arnold Schwarzenegger naturally just started each competition with points already on the scoreboard just because of his genetics, really.
Yeah.
Um, and I think he won what, 7 in a row, something like
Yeah, I
that.
think so, man.
I think he says at the end of Pumping Iron, which is well worth a watch.
Oh, that's great.
If that sort of thing interests you and you haven't watched it, yeah, that's a really interesting watch. Um, but yeah, it's easy to end up with sort of even not aesthetic sort of dissymmetry and stuff like that, but
Hmm.
again, if you're doing exercises, say again coming back to that bench press, just because it's a nice sort of relatable one. If you're coming back to a bench press and you're using a barbell, you're moving the bar as one whole unit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're just trying to push the bar away from you. So it doesn't matter, or it does matter, but you might not really be conscious of what side's working harder. Are
Yeah.
you right-handed? Is your right hand doing more of the work and your left hand's just kind of coasting? And then you end up with the right-hand side being more developed and probably stronger, potentially even physically larger than the left-hand side.
One thing,
So
yeah.
go on, go
Just I
on.
remember when I was at the gym, I remember a PT once said something to me that I really remembered, and he was saying that like he said that it's like you see a lot of people that, just going off what you're saying, that if they train like chest and buys so much, their posture starts to like come inwards and they get like ripples in the t-shirts, and they might look a bit hench, but like they've got like a really underdeveloped kind of back and stuff like that, and then that can lead to so many injuries down the line because
Yeah.
the buys in the chest gets overdeveloped, and then the other muscles can't support it as well, so it starts to lead to kind of other injuries.
But yeah, definitely. I mean, when you think about it, you're developing a muscle to be stronger, even heavier, maybe on your skeleton. That's going to cause tension. So normally you'll see people with that rounded sort of shoulder sort of posture, who they're trying to work their chest to hopefully sort of bring their shoulders back and expand their chest. So they're like, oh, I feel like I haven't got much of a chest. I'm going to work on my chest, and that'll balance things out.
Mm-hmm.
When really what they should be doing is strengthening the back muscles that are going to pull your shoulders back and sort of pronounce your chest a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
So they might actually be doing themselves more damage and going the other way. I had a mate who was a sort of uni student. He didn't have the money for the gym at the time. He didn't have the money for a membership. And he was doing pull-ups every day. He had a pull-up bar. Just one of them daft ones you can get and just put in the doorway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, all them ones that you see on the fail videos that aren't attached properly. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, I've seen plenty of them. But he was doing just pull-ups every time he was going in and out the kitchen, just a few pull-ups, which again, all well and good for a couple of weeks, maybe even a couple of months. But that went on for a considerable amount of time, and he ended up with really bad shoulder problems, to the point it was affecting his ability to work. And he actually got prescribed some personal training through the NHS,
right.
Just to go and rectify the job. It was essentially going to get physio, but the problem wasn't that he needed a release of tension. He just needed the tension elsewhere.
Right.
And yeah, that was causing it. Just working the same muscles over and over again and not doing others. Like you say, it's like a pulley system. Your bones work through a pulley system, really. Ligaments, tendons, and bones pulling your bones to where your brain tells them to, and you get tension in there as well. And you know yourself, if you've got like a net or something like that, you put a little bit of tension in one area and it just kicks off elsewhere, doesn't it? As well,
yeah.
It just adds tension elsewhere. So that sort of thing, like you say, can knock on and have effects on posture, and even just ability to do day-to-day stuff eventually. Which again, when you realize how many muscles we've got, it makes you realize that we do need that good holistic training approach. And like I say, just going to the gym 3 days a week and doing, say, maybe it's a chest day, a back day, and a leg day might not cut it in the long term, because there's muscles in there that's maybe getting neglected, depending on what your workout looks like.
Yeah.
You might be better off doing a push day, a pull day, and a legs day, because then at least pushing and pulling, you're going to work muscles that you might not just work through chest exercises or back exercises. But again, if you've got any questions about setting that sort of thing up, give me a shout. And like I say, I'm always happy to help with stuff like that. Trying to think of any sort of major ones to mention on the front side before we spin to the back before we finish up. We can see that sort of like the thigh muscle is actually a collection of different muscles. The technical name for it is the quadricep or the quadriceps, because it's four muscles grouped together.
Yeah.
Pretty much, and that's where the quad part of it comes from. Your bicep is 2 muscles together. Your tricep is 3 muscles sort of grouped together, and your quadricep is 4. And your quadricep's actually the biggest muscle group in your body, which is why when you're doing anything that involves legs, your body needs to deliver that much more oxygen to this big muscle or this big muscle group, which is why your heart rate comes up so much. You do 20 squats on the spot and your heart rate's going to come up. Yeah, it's a quad exercise. It's not cardio. You're not skipping. You're not doing star jumps. You're not sprinting. But you will feel that heart rate come up. You really will. I've had, you what, buddy?
Go on, mate. You saying you've had lads?
I was going to say I've had lads in the gym over the years that are strong enough to move a weight, but they don't have the cardiovascular fitness to lift the weight, because they're using, like, again, in a squat, it might be a big heavy squat. They might be going for 2 reps or something like that. They might get the 1 rep out, really good display of sort of 1 rep max muscle strength. But because they haven't got the cardiovascular fitness, because their lungs and their heart aren't as efficient as getting the blood to where it needs to be, the muscle shuts down before they get a chance to do another repetition. It's not that they're not strong enough to do another one. They're not fit enough to do another one.
Well, yeah, that's why obviously they tell boxers don't put on too much muscle, because the more muscle that you have, um the more blood that needs to go pump around those muscles, and the more, like, that can fill up with lactic acid. If if you've got a lot, if you're carrying a lot of muscle weight around, it's not necessarily beneficial if it's not directly related to the job you're trying to do.
Yeah, yeah. I think I told you before. There was one guy I used to work with who all he wanted to do was get to weighing 100 kilograms.
Hmm.
That was his goal. I'll weigh to 100. I'll weigh 100 kilograms. I mean, he was in good shape, but he wasn't necessarily concerned about like, right, I want to be at 100 kilograms with 10% body fat. Do you know what I mean? He just wanted to get to 100 kilograms, and yeah, he did, and he looked in decent shape. He wasn't necessarily shredded
Hmm.
or too defined, because it's kind of hard to be at that weight, especially he wasn't much taller than me, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
He wasn't much taller than me, which doesn't take much doing to be to be a little bit taller. But he was saying when he got to 100 kilograms, when he was lying down on a night, he couldn't breathe properly. The weight
wow,
of it
yeah.
was just crushing his frame. His natural frame just isn't built to carry 100 kilograms of mass. And he came down to about 93 kilograms, and felt a lot better for it.
Of course, man. Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, just because again, you're not laying down and all this extra weight sitting on top of your chest and your heart and your lungs and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, there is that to think about as well. You can be too muscular, definitely.
For sure, man. 100%.
Yeah. Right. If we can just spin round to the next slide then and have a look on the old backside.
Yeah, you talk about
Um,
heart rate going up, and that just made me think about like doing like burpees. That's something that would literally like make your heart rate fly through the roof if
yeah,
you're doing it.
if you've never done burpees, give them a go, and you'll just realize that just one or two, and it is again, it's just from your body trying to get the blood where it needs to be. Like 1 minute you're needing your arms to push up from the floor, then you need your legs to jump back in and get yourself back up to your feet again.
You kill 'em, man.
It's asking a lot of your body. And yeah, there's a couple of the workout videos that I've done where you can see the burpees get the better of us like towards the end.
Yeah,
The sort of mid-set instruction and commentary dies off when there's burpees going on, definitely.
like
But go on, bud.
I've done like I did P90 back in the day. I've done Insanity before, and the one that kills me is always the stuff that's related to jumping. I can't remember what it's called. Like maybe it's not isometric or something, but I don't remember.
Like plyometrics.
Plyometrics, that's it, not isometric.
Plyometrics, yeah.
Plyometrics. Any plyometric stuff always kills me off, man, because that's when I feel myself start to like tense up, and I feel the lactic acid the most when I'm doing like any plyometric exercises, and that like usually like the more like cardio based stuff or whatever, that like I can usually like I'll start to get knackered, but I'm like pretty okay with it. But the stuff that makes me really
Yeah.
want to throw up is the plyometric stuff, because I just feel my whole body just like hating it.
That's awful, yeah, isn't it? Because it's designed to be, by nature, plyometrics is designed to be quite explosive
Right, yeah,
and quite
exactly,
sort
yeah.
and quite sort of like fast twitch.
Hmm.
So the name of the game isn't necessarily to also the main benefit you're doing is going at 100% for everything that you're doing, really. So each jump that you're doing is designed to be as high as you can get. Kind of. It's not just a case of like get yourself up and off the floor. It's designed to be explosive. You'll probably find that you're doing it for a shorter amount of time. It might be like 20 seconds, the sort of thing that you'll find quite like you say in Insanity or HIIT training or MetaFit or something like that. That sort of thing. But yeah, those plyometrics, because they're designed to be so explosive, they are just that much more challenging. Each repetition is almost like 100% of what you can manage.
It's brutal, man.
It really is.
Yeah, there's one that I remember where it's like you do like lunges, but it's like a jump lunge. So you like lunge, jump, lunge, jump, lunge, jump, and then you'd sprint on the spot, and then it's like that just gets you so bad
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
But
Sprinting when your legs feel like lead from the from the
yeah,
from the jumping. Yeah, yeah. It is. It is. And again, it's a totally different type of training. The benefits and the adaptation that you're going to get from your body through that training is going to be totally different to just working those same muscles just through the same range on like on a machine.
for sure, yeah.
You know, plyometrics is really hard to do with any resistance, really, because
But
like I
yeah,
say, you're trying to max out. Um, Have you ever seen the clip of Terry Crews doing Euro training on My Wife and Kids?
No, that sounds amazing.
Oh,
Actually,
mate,
might have actually. I feel like that's a meme. I think I might have seen that
I
actually. Yeah,
think it is, yeah. And
yeah,
he's literally doing this thing where he's doing a bench press and he's chucking the bar in the air and clapping his hands and then catching it again on the way back down.
yeah,
And it looks ridiculous,
yeah,
but that is essentially what plyometrics is and would be with resistance.
yeah,
The
yeah.
closest thing that I've seen people sort of get would be medicine ball stuff. You
Right.
know, be it
Yep,
sort of
yep, yep.
medicine ball slams designed to be
Hmm.
explosive, tossing it away from you as hard as you can, throwing it into the wall as hard as you can,
Yeah,
that sort of thing. Again, designed to be really explosive. And like you're saying, that's where the buildup of lactic acid just comes. And if your body's not used to clearing out lactic acid and being efficient at dealing with lactic acid, it builds up, your muscles lock up. You potentially end up throwing up to get that acid out in the only way that your body can figure out at the time. You
yeah,
know,
exactly.
again, there's no surprise that that normally comes after a heavy leg session or a heavy squat session or deadlifts. Again, muscle groups that are using the most muscle in one go. You know, I've never seen anybody throw up from bicep curls that you're just using one muscle. It's just one little muscle, you know, working by itself. Your body
That's
can
it,
cope with that
man.
much lactic acid.
I know.
You're doing jump squats on the spot, like you say, plyometrics. Your glutes are working, your legs are working, your hamstrings are stabilizing you on the way back down. Your calves are working. Whereas your calves normally wouldn't work through a squat, they're working at the last part of your jump to get you airborne. That push comes from your toes.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
then you've got your calves working as well again, which might not used to be doing very much at all.
I
And
know.
again, that lactic acid builds up, and it feels awful. And that is where you'll feel like I've seen people go white, shaking, you
Oh,
know,
mate, yeah.
throwing up.
Oh,
It's
that's it.
lactic
Yeah,
acid more often than not.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'll get you shaking like 100%.
Yeah, and again, your body just gets more and more efficient at doing it over time. You know, your body gets better at doing it, which is where that muscle endurance component comes from. And you know, if that sort of thing's sort of quite new to you, that's something we're going to get into in a couple of weeks' time. Actually, looking at different components of fitness and why training one might not benefit what you're actually trying to do. You know, and get better at. You know, if you're trying to get again better at clearing lactic acid and muscles working for longer, sorry, going and doing one rep max on everything and putting as much weight on as you can won't help that develop because your muscles aren't working for a prolonged amount of time. You know, so how are they going to get better at working for a prolonged amount of time? You know, and
Hmm.
you you say quite a lot, and it's easy, especially if you're new to fitness, just sort of stepping into fitness. It will be quite overwhelming. Like, oh, they're training that way, they're doing that, he's doing that, she's over there doing that. I don't know even know where to start for what I want to do. You know, and it's if you're new to that environment, be it a group fitness or even just like a just sort of like an extra sort of curricular thing, sort of out and about, you know, be it a rambling club, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
It's also easy to get wrapped up in the way that other people do theirs,
Yeah, exactly.
that you sort of forget about doing it in the way that's best for you,
True.
you know. And your diet goes hand in hand with that as well. You know, I see people trying the rocks diet and do you know what I mean? Like the guy's on 6,000 calories a day or something stupid, and the bloke weighs maybe he's an extra 10 kilograms on top of me. Like you don't need that many calories. You're gonna be ill.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
you want to build yourself up to that point. Don't just jump straight there. I can understand doing it as an experiment, you
Hmm.
know, and realizing just sort of where you're at with stuff, but it's not anything that I would recommend. And I say it all the time. It's why we call it personal training. You know, it's got to be personal for a reason. We're all different. We're all training for different things. Fitness means something different to everybody,
Hmm.
and like I say, it is easy to just sort of get swept up in what somebody else is doing because, you know, maybe they do know more than you do. Maybe they give off the idea that they know more than you do.
Hmm.
That doesn't necessarily mean that they know what is best for you.
Yeah, it's a very
So,
good point,
like I
man.
said, it's just something to think about as well. And again, you know, I would rather anybody emailed me and asked me questions about it rather than going along with something and spending 6 months of time and money on a gym membership or whatever when things open up again, whatever we're looking to do when we can get back to a bit of more normality, you know. I always just wanted to help people get the most out of their time and money when
Yeah.
it comes to a membership or something like that, you know. Train efficiently, cut down the amount of time that you need to be in the gym, train specifically, and you're going to cut down the amount of time it takes you to get where you're actually trying to get to, you know. But again, if there's anything that you're ever struggling with, just reach out and give me a shout. Um, Okay, cool. So again, there's not really so many muscles that we need to focus on the backside just before we wrap up. But again, we can see certain groups that are all together that we might have thought as one muscle. The hamstring down the back of the legs is actually a collection of different muscles that again just make up the one group. Your calf muscle is actually kind of two separate muscles. Which again, depending on how we're training them, depends on what angle we're going to hit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Interesting one that I think affects all of us is this one that joins on at the base of the skull, sort of flares out in like a diamond shape out to the shoulders, and then sort of comes back on and reconnects halfway down the spine. And that's what we call that's what we would call our traps. And that is where we carry a lot of tension. Day to day,
big time.
If you go for a massage, probably one of the first places they're going to start is up there, because we do carry a lot of baggage there, and again, the lifestyle or the changes that we've maybe had to our lifestyle over the last years. I know I'm spending a lot more time sat down. I need to think about my posture a little bit more. It's easy to fall into them sort of rounded shoulders sort of positions, and sort of what we were saying before. You're pulling that muscle into a position where sooner or later that's just going to feel normal, stretched out to that point, and it might even feel painful coming from. I mean, do you ever catch yourself with your posture and you go to put it right and you're like, how can this posture be right when this one hurts more than the way I was just sitting?
Pretty much all the time, bro. That's like basically my living experience.
I'm just going to sit myself up and put my chest out because it's good for us, and after 30 seconds, it's that hurts. It's just because your body's not used to it. Your body's not strong in that position, and you've got to retrain it.
Yeah.
You've like I say, you've got to retrain it to be able to get to that point where it feels natural in that position as well. So again, the way that we're holding ourselves, how we day to day, how are we sleeping? What sort of positions are we sleeping in? I had, say it was one of my mates actually. I sort of treated him as a client and just sort of diagnosed him. Because what he was doing, he was getting shocking pain in his shoulder, and we were trying to figure out what it was day to day because he wasn't training, and that was the thing. I was like, so you haven't hurt yourself at the gym? What have you done? And all it was, he's gotten in the habit over years and years and years of sleeping with one arm under the pillow.
Oh wow!
Just that one side, and he's got muscles in a shape that they aren't on the other side.
Yeah.
But that's for 6, 7, 8 hours a night.
True.
Yeah, so you
yeah.
wake up the next day, and especially if you're not really taking any time to think about your posture and engage in those muscles, those muscles have maybe just been pulled into a different range altogether, and you're asking them to do whatever you're asking them to do with them. Of course they're weaker.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course they're going to be weaker, especially in if you're in a position where the other side feels strong. It's going to have that sort of knock-on effect. Another one as well, and probably the last one that I'd probably want to touch on would be lower back muscles, because we get a lot of lower back pain day to day.
Yeah, dude.
And same again, it was something that I mentioned last week when we were looking at the skeleton. It's those 5 vertebrae at the bottom, or that lumbar section of your spine, that gives you the most movement.
Yes.
So there's no surprise that that we carry a lot of strain and a lot of tension there. But what you find a lot of is that lower back problems don't actually come from the lower back muscles. It's somewhere else, and like you say, coming onto tension. If you've got particularly, in fact, buddy, if you can just go back to the last picture so we can look at the guy from the front again, it might help just picture this a little bit better. So if you've got tight hip flexors or thigh muscles, which is pretty much these that come down from the hip crease, where the hip joint would be, and sort of down into the thigh muscle, we've got little muscles there that we would call hip flexors. Now, if they're in balance with your hamstrings, your pelvis is going to sit level. Yeah, your pelvis is going to sit where it's meant to sit. Whereas looking at it from a side point of view, that way is the front, this way is the back. If your hip flexors that are here are really tight, they're going to pull forward, and you're going to end up with like a tilt on your pelvis. So it's almost like your pelvis is tilting forward. So if your pelvis goes like that and tilts forward, what's your lower back going to do? It's going to do exactly the same and sort of dip in and end up with that arch.
True, yeah.
And that arch day to day can eventually knock on effect with the muscles, but not just the muscles, but the actual vertebrae of your
Yeah.
of your skeleton as well. You know, so like I say, just that's a really sort of easy to explain example of what you were on about earlier on. You know, just tension in one place just having a knock on effect. You know, and I think I mentioned to you that lad I was speaking to once upon a time, he had a shoulder injury, and when he got it diagnosed, he had a problem with his calf.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah, I
knocked
did,
on all
yeah.
the way up his body. Yeah, yeah. It's just like then his hamstring was tight, so his left side of his glute was tight, and then
Hmm.
his back was tight, and it just worked its way all the way up.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I mean, I told you as well before about like, obviously, like, like when I was running, well, I injured my shoulder like like a while ago, a couple of times, and so I couldn't really lift weights for a certain period of time. So I started getting running, like I was doing a lot of long distance running, and obviously because I had that impingement and I'd been kind of like that shoulder would hang lower because of the injury, that I was actually more weighted on my right hand side. So I was putting more
yeah.
pressure on my right knee. So then I started to get a right knee injury from running with that impingement.
Mhm.
So it just kind of, yeah, it all filters in.
Well, yeah, yeah. Like you say, it becomes normal, doesn't it? Your body just gets used to it being a certain way, even if it is, you know, just one shoulder sitting a little bit lower than the other. You know, you might have a shoulder blade that doesn't maybe move as freely on one side as the other either. You know, and anything like that, like you say, just has such a long lasting effect.
I've had
Um, until you deal with it.
exactly. I've had PTs before, like say to me, like they'll be like, stand up straight and like look at me, and then they
Hmm.
can tell, they can be like, you've got a right shoulder injury because like the way that you just naturally like that, and it might
Yeah,
even be a slight thing, but it's something like that, you guys can tell.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like sometimes definitely, you know, because like you say, having an injury in one place can eventually lead to injuries somewhere else.
Hmm.
You know, you might have a bad hip or a bad knee, so you stand with all your weight on the other side, and that's actually happened before. Where I'll have someone come to us and say, "Look, me knee is really really bad," and I'll say, "Was there any other injuries that you've had?" It's like, well, yeah, I had that knee done a few years ago. I'm like, well, you probably got so used to walking a way that compensated for that knee, and then you haven't relearned the way that you've walked or
Hmm.
retrained the way that you walk since you've had that operation done. Um, you're getting wear and tear on your left knee now instead, you know, and stuff like that. Sometimes, like you say, you can tell. You know, it might just be a case of getting someone to do one exercise, and like I say, if it's pulling movement, you can see are both shoulder blades moving together? Are they moving as far as each other? It's little things that you come to pick up on. I think just sort of
Hmm.
over time, just through experience. Like it's certainly not anything that they teach you, but you just realize that these patterns come up. You know, someone has got a bad lower back, so my go-to now is to start with their hamstrings or their glutes
Hmm.
rather than doing lower back strengthening exercises,
Oh,
because
yeah.
chances are the lower back's actually okay. Um,
Well, I mean, I mentioned it before as well. Like, I had pretty got to the point where I was getting pretty significant pain in my shoulder, my neck, and from that injury. And the thing that helped me, and obviously then running was starting to hurt my knee. And it was like I could kind of get a break really. But I
yeah.
mean, this was a few years ago now. But the thing that did massively help, as I mentioned before, was I started doing Pilates every single day. And obviously the stigma about around Pilates being more kind of for women, just because of that's kind of I guess the more people who gravitate towards it. But then
Yeah.
the reality of that though actually is that when you do a lot of the exercises, if you've ever done any kind of strength and conditioning stuff, a lot of the same exercises are just it's just branded differently. But when I was doing it, I ended up strengthening up my core a lot just from doing like a lot of kind of ab exercises and a lot of exercises which actually help with tension relief and it basically just strengthened up my core loads, and I think it kind of helped my posture, and then through
Really.
the way of that it just helped with the injury so much, like and it kind of went away after that for a long time.
It gives you a lot more control over your body. I think
Yeah.
it helps develop what we call like a mind muscle connection and engaging that muscle at the right time to take strain off of joints and stuff like that. You know, like you say, just being able to engage your core at certain points and like even like your abs and other little muscles that you might not necessarily think about when you think of like your more stricter sort of gym training. You know, you never have like a rotator cuff day at the gym. You might go down and you might do a couple of bits on your rotator cuffs as a warm up before you do your pressing or whatever. Or you probably should, to be honest. But at the same time, there's a lot of muscles that sort of don't get fit into like even a 5-day split at the gym.
True.
You know, there's a lot of muscles that don't get worked. Whereas stuff like that, I think, puts you in a lot more, makes you a lot more present sort of within your own body. It's a lot of mindfulness, and like I say, it gives you a lot more control over muscles, you know, each individual muscle, and like you say, engaging them at the right time, which makes other day-to-day stuff a lot safer and sustainable on your body and on your system. Interesting point just before we finish up, buddy, because something that you touched on there about women tending to gravitate towards the likes of Pilates and stuff like that. And from my experience, the main thing that I've sort of put that down to is just that Pilates, yoga, exercise classes in general are exactly that. They're done in a group.
Yeah.
And I tend to find that women, not all women, of course, but prefer a little bit of a social aspect as well, and a little bit of a social element to the exercise and to the fitness. You know, going and doing stuff as a group. And because class exercises are so sort of heavily leaning that way now, I think that inherently just sort of puts some blokes off. You know, like, oh, I don't want to go and be the only bloke. You know, and that sort of thing. So it's not even a case of blokes are against the idea of doing Pilates, although some probably would be. And it's certainly not a case of Pilates wouldn't be beneficial for everybody. I think it's just the format that it's delivered in. You know, and like you're saying, that sort of group scenario. You know, but yeah, you know, don't ever be sort of put off or think that you can't go and do an exercise class for anything, any reason like that, you know. It's like I say, it's as beneficial to men and women, really. You know, it was something I hadn't really thought about until I started doing a little bit of yoga last year again, you know, when I didn't have me foam roller handy that I'd left at the gym, and I didn't have you know, other sort of parts of fitness that I was used to doing. I started doing yoga, and I realized how certain areas of your physique need working on, and not just from a visual point of view, you know.
For sure, mate. It's really low impact as well, so it's like if you do have injuries, it's not going to kind of overexert any of your kind of, you know, injuries that you have.
Yeah, it's hard to make anything worse. You'd sort of retraining muscles to work the right way, rather than encouraging them to keep working in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Oh man, Gaz says he gets a lot of back pain from cleaning his class. Yeah.
You want to talk about back pain? You should see me carrying with Mercy on Overwatch the other day. I was playing with 4 of my mates, and oh man, I was trying to keep all of them alive. That was something else.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, I love it, man. Class. Yeah, get in. All right, that'll about do us for the slideshow then, buddy. If we can just have a quick look at the last slide just before we spin on. I'd mentioned this last week, with it being the first week, but it's something that's going to be there every week. I'm just going to make sure that the last slide has got everything on that you might need to go back and just remind yourself what works need doing in your workbooks, you know, or maybe it's what we've covered this week, what we're doing next week. So that's always there to come back to, so you haven't got to sift through, you know, two hours worth of video to try and find out what exercises they're doing and stuff like that. So that's always there to come back to. I would say, as always, and, you know, again, mentioned last week, if you don't mind just taking the time to fill in the short survey that we've got, it helps us a lot, you know, lets us know how we're doing. And of course, your feedback is really important to us as well. We'll be back next Wednesday. 10 a.m. And we'll be looking at, like I say, nutrition, food labels, and the benefits of healthy eating as well. Just to make sure that we're all familiar with the workbooks, I'm just going to ask Daniel to pull it up. He's already got it. He's ahead of us. He's ahead of us, man. Yeah. So for this week, we're going to be doing pages 4 to 8, building on what we did last week as well. So just pull it up myself before we finish up. How the Body Works is the workbook that you're looking for. I'm going to just send out each workbook as we get to it, so you haven't got 5 workbooks to look at and think, oh, which one am I on this week? And like we said last week, as you're filling them in, just keep hold of them. Ask me if you've got any questions, but just keep hold of them, and then just send them over when they're done. Okay, so we did pages 2 and 3. So yeah, we're going to do pages 4 and 5, which are all to do just with the heart that we've looked at today. Again, go back and use the session again if you need to or you want to. You should have your diagram there as well. Okay, that was the heart. Then we've got the respiratory system, which is like your heart and your lungs and stuff like that as well. So up to and including page 8, like I said, just so you can have a little bit of a look and just be aware what we're doing over the next week. And then that'll set us up nicely to start looking at nutrition next Wednesday, ready to rock. Cool. So yeah, pages 4 to 8, and again that is back in the presentation as well. If you do need to go back and just double check on what it is that needs doing, but yeah, just pages 4 to 8 this week, and then we'll push on next week. I've just noticed Daniel's put the survey in the chat as well, haven't you, buddy?
Yeah,
just so it's easy, just there, easy to access. Like I say, it'll take about 30 seconds, and like I say, it helps us out massively. Other than that, buddy, I think that's about it from me today. Anything to add, man?
I think that's about it, buddy. So they're both the workout vid and the survey both in the chat as well as the description there if you want to access them, guys. But I think I'm pretty happy with that, dude.
Nice one, buddy. And just to let you guys know, obviously, last week I'd put on the just like a nice little 20-minute stretching video on, as a fitness video that we'd sort of paired up with last week. This week, same again. If you're still a little bit dubious, how active can I be? It's all chair based. It's all done from sitting down. Maybe using just 1 or 2 bits from around the house, but you can use body weight for just about everything as well. So again, don't think it's going to be necessarily stuff that's going to wipe the floor with you. It's just nice and easy, especially early on, while we can ease in and just get maybe a little bit more active again. Certainly as we're coming out of winter, we're moving forward. Things are hopefully getting warmer and a little bit brighter. All to look forward to, and like I say, we can get ahead of the game now and just try and be that little bit more active. So again, any trouble with that, give me a shout, let me know. If you enjoy it, let me know how you got on. If not, we'll probably both be back to catch you next Wednesday.
Yep.
10 o'clock. Yeah, cool. Right, guys, have a good week. Take it easy. Give me a shout if you need anything, and I'll see you next Wednesday.
All good. See you later, guys.